is the problem structure. All the problems in the PMP exam is broken down into 4 pieces. You have some background or context. I call it a scenario. That's the details. For instance, you walk into a meeting and the team's arguing. That's a scenario, okay? It gives you extra information. And then it asks a question. What is the question asking? What's the real question? You know, what do you do next is a common question. 80% of the questions are like that. They're going to be situational. They're going to be, what do you do now? What's the first thing you do? What's the next thing you do? And that's the real question. Or it could be, what do you don't want to do? What document don't you need moving forward? Or what document do you need to update? Or what document do you need to change? These are the things that you're looking at with the real question. And sometimes the real question isn't spelled out for you. It doesn't say this. For instance, you're working with your team and they changed something and they didn't tell you. Is that a change management problem or is it a communication management problem? Right? That's the question. Okay. What's the real problem? What are you trying to solve? And only through looking at the scenario and the real question can you start putting things together. But sometimes that doesn't even help. Every question has four options, and there's only going to be one correct one. However, there are many times that all 4 options sound really good, like my scenario, you know, where the team made a change and they didn't tell you. Is that a problem in scope management? Is it a problem in communication management? Well, guess what the answer is? Both. But on the exam, you can only choose one. So which one are you going to choose? So you don't only need to know what the scenario is. You don't only need to know what the real question is. You know what you need to analyze those 4 options. In our scenario, you're going to have to do some root cause analysis. And you're going to have to look at it in this manner. Okay, it was change and it was communication. They didn't tell me. So I'm going to have to figure out what was the initial issue. And through root cause analysis, which we learn in the class, we actually explore this question. We discover it's the change that created the issue and the resulting communication problems made it worse. So we have to actually put all 3 pieces together. The details, you know, the background context, the real question, and the 4 options. By the way, if any of you have questions as we're going through this, please ask. I'm happy to discuss these, and I love dissecting questions. In fact, here's a good question. You're just assigned to a project that's moved into detailed planning. What do you need to do? Well, we need to know some context here, right? When we study project management, we learn there's 5 groups of processes. Number 1, we decide whether or not we need to do the project, right? That's making the decision, go, no go. Second, we put together a good plan. Third, we lead and direct the work. Fourth, we monitor and control and inspect the work, and we also make changes. And 5, we close, okay? So that's part of the background information we're going to need. to answer this question. We're moving into planning, which means the project is already approved, okay? So what we have to think about is we have 4 options. We know we're into planning and we're no longer making the decision of the project. What's the real question? What do you do next, right? What's the next thing you do? What's the first thing you do? What's the highest priority thing you should do? And that's what you should consider me. That's the question. First of all, one of the strategies that we always use is something called process of elimination. A is not a viable option, right? So we can eliminate it. One of the things we learn in class and we learn in our projects is you never say no, right? Don't say no. It doesn't do you any good. It doesn't make anything better. So we can get rid of A. And that leaves B, C, and D. D doesn't look like a good option either, right? You do not just pull something out of the back of your mind. You don't use intuition. You don't use your instincts. It doesn't give you a good option to analyze, right? Analysis, we learn as project management, is also not the best way to make decisions, but analysis helps us make good decisions, okay? So we can get rid of D, and that leaves B and C. And B and C are both good. Neither one is bad, right? Consult historical information. That'll tell us how we've done well in the past. Seek experts. That's always good, right? Project manager doesn't know everything. Validation is good. And using your experts around you to make a decision is good too. But what about stakeholder analysis? Well, that's good. You should be doing that in planning, right? You should be constantly doing stakeholder analysis. We learn that we start analyzing and identifying our stakeholders even before the project's approved. And we constantly do it throughout the life of the project. So it's a part of planning too. Now, here's the problem. How do I choose between B and C? This is a traditionally very tricky question. It's called a 50-50. If I flip a coin, I'm going to get half of these right. Oh, by the way, I only have a minute to solve this problem. That's another part of the trickiness of these questions. You only have a minute to solve each problem. Well, you have 4 hours, okay? You have 4 hours to solve the problem, and you have 200 questions, and they're all multiple choice. That means you have 1.2 minutes to review, analyze, and answer each question, and move on, and move on, and move on, and move on. So this is a struggle in prioritization and understanding and responding to urgency. The exam puts you in the seat of a project manager, and it gives you the experience a project manager has on a regular basis. And that's what we have with this question, right? I don't know which is the better answer, and I have to figure out a way to prioritize. This is what a manager and leader does every day when they go into work. And that's what the exam's testing you on. Not just your knowledge, not just what you're memorizing. In fact, you cannot memorize your way to a perfect grade. You can't memorize a pass, okay? What you have to do is memorize enough, and we can talk about enough if you're interested, and also be able to use what you've memorized to solve problems. And that's what we're doing here. We're problem solving. The answer is B. Consult historical information and seek expert judgment. If you study the PMBOK, tools and techniques that you use and inputs that you use have to do with historical information and lessons learned. And you also use your subject experts, who oftentimes are team members and oftentimes are just people around who know things that you need. And that's how you put your plan together. But we said stakeholder analysis happens in planning too. But traditionally, generally, as a rule, stakeholder analysis starts and is connected with the initiating process group, so that we must understand that B is a better answer. It's not that C is wrong or bad. It's that B is better than C. And this is what frustrates us all when we look at these problems. Number one, you may have all four options that are good, and you have to choose the best one. Number two, they might all be poor options like A and D. You still have to choose one. But this is the way a project manager has to approach many problems on their project as well, right? You walk into the room and you don't have any good options. You still have to make a decision. So the exam is testing you. It's testing you not just on your knowledge, but your ability to problem solve even when you don't have any good options. This is what makes the exam frustrating. This is what makes the exam challenging. And this is what makes the exam tricky, not difficult, tricky. You have to think in a different manner and you have to practice.